Hey everybody, my name is Eytan. I'm the founder and CEO of CommonTime Pathways, and I'm here hanging out with Dreion. Dreion is one of the coolest musical artists that I know out there. Went to Berklee. He's also grew up in foster care and went through that whole process of learning how to find himself through his music and gained access to a college education through music. And he also was on The Voice on season 26. I think it was Team Snoop. Very cool stuff. And, he's just got such wonderful passion for music and for his mission in life. The thing that I love too is that he's also a family man, just like me. So, I think it's really great to have you on today. And could you just kind of tell us a little bit about what makes you wake up in the morning, what gets you jazzed about what's coming next?
Well, no, thank you, Eytan, for having me, man. It's great to see you, and it's a pleasure to be on here just to talk about these important topics within music. As I said, my name is Dreion, like Dream On, and that is really the mission that I live by. I've as a former foster youth, as someone who has come from a very difficult background, not the most, easiest family background, and just the cards that I was dealt were not the easiest to be able to reach greater and higher levels. I didn't have as much access. It definitely is a huge part of my story, which is the dream, which is, the passion, the thing that I've always wanted to do, and that was music. And it wasn't just because, I love music. It was because it gave me uh, a reason for being. It gave me something I can be in control of, something that I had the reins of. And so one of the most important things for me, as a young musician, or as a young passionate creative youth, was to figure out how to make it a lifelong career. And so as a young child, I mean, I was involved in church, singing in the choir, playing for the choir. I was involved in um, uh, you know city choirs and choirs in middle school, high school, talent shows. I got into any and everything I could possibly get into
Right. Yeah.
music. Plus, it was also a great getaway from everything else that was happening and going on. A lot of times, I didn't have the ability to be able to just, you know, do the things that I wanted to do musically, and so I had to figure it out myself. I didn't have, anybody to teach me how to play instruments. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to sing. I had to do it all myself. So I am a self-taught, self-made musician and artist. And but one of the great things about it is that being in school, being in high school and things like that, gave me opportunities and led me to great teachers and music teachers that uh, gave me resources to be able to go to college,
Mm.
to figure out how to get into the world of music as a full-time career and not just a hobby. And that's what I did. I took advantage of those resources. A lot of great people in high school, helped me get scholarships, helped me get. I actually am a Gates Millennium Scholar. So Bill
That's
Gates,
right. Yeah, I read about that. That's really cool.
he really it really changed my life, and giving me the Gates Millennium Scholarship, because it's a full ride scholarship to any college in the country. And he was doing it for 20 years, and I was one of the 1,000 students out of the 52,000 that they had narrowed it down to,
Mm.
who who were able to actually win the scholarship in 2015. And I decided to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston,
Right.
where
I mean, you're from Omaha, right? Is that where you're from?
I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. Yes.
So what brought you out to Berkeley? I mean, obviously Berkeley's like a mecca for contemporary music. Was that the only college that you were thinking about going to, or were there others that you were considering too?
So in Omaha, Nebraska, that's where I'm from. That's where my family is. That's where I grew up
Mm.
my entire life. And so the plan initially was, if I didn't get into Berkeley, or I didn't get into some of these other colleges that I wanted, was to go to the local college. And that's essentially what happened at first. I went there first to kind of get a little bit more training in music before I went out to Berkeley. So I went to the University of Nebraska in Omaha. I wanted to go to Oberlin or even Juilliard and some of these other like new schools, some of the other schools in New York. But Berkeley, I think, encompassed everything that I wanted to venture off into as an artist. And they had so much more contemporary options and opportunities. I remember going to the first college that I went to in Nebraska, and I walked in the professor's office, and he goes, "We're going to make you an opera singer."
He just decided for you.
Yeah, and I said, "This is the moment that I know will not be happening." So I actually pulled out of that vocal
Ooh,
program. And I decided to study jazz piano because it was the closest thing to contemporary music that I could get at
mm,
that college. And I'm grateful for that because it definitely helped me a whole lot more being able to understand chords and chord progressions and writing and things of that nature, which is super, super helpful.
yeah.
But I knew at that moment that I wanted to go to Berkeley, and I said, okay, well, we're gonna get through this year. I'm gonna go to Berkeley, and I'm going to do what I really want to do. And I just feel that Berkeley was the right place and the best place for me,
Mm,
and I had the incredible opportunity to do it, and
yeah.
change my life.
That's really incredible, and there's so many kids who don't get the Gates Foundation scholarship, and they're the ones who always wonder. And you say they had 52,000 people they were considering. I mean, this just tells you how many people are out there that need to find ways to afford college. And it's so fascinating that they had all of these people. I'm assuming from those 52,000 people, most of them were not intending to be music people. Is that
Oh,
right?
I think I was the one of two
That's
in that
insane.
one of two in that thousand. Yes.
That's insane, and that I think that kind of comes to the point where, most people who need to afford to go to college or need help affording to go to college come from places where they usually have a community around them that says if you're going to go to college and someone's going to pay for it, it better not be for music, right? It's better be for something more lucrative. And I mean, I had to deal with that issue too with my family, right? There was this whole, my family didn't move here from another country just so that you could go study music. Like, no, you're going to go do engineering or you're going to go do something that'll make you some money, right? And so talk to me about what that was like with, I'm assuming you knew forever, like I did, that you wanted to be a musician, that you wanted to study music, but I'm wondering what the barriers were other than financial. Were there some social barriers in your life, in your community? And I know you said foster care, you grew up in foster care. Was the community there like, if you're going to go to college, you're going to go and you can't be a musician? Did you have any pushback?
Well, I didn't grow up in the foster care system my entire life, but that wasn't even on the table, even
Okay.
being able to even go to college. I mean, that wasn't even something that anybody was pushing. I mean, they were trying to figure out if you were going to make it to the next grade alone.
Wow. Yeah.
But it still is not something that was accessible because my mother told me the reason why I even, I won over $700 and, excuse me, $700,000 worth of scholarships.
Hmm.
And, but it was simply because my mother told me if I wanted to go to college, I had to pay for it,
Right.
and I could even play devil's advocate and say, okay, well, if I wanted to become a doctor, if I wanted to become a lawyer or something like that, maybe there might have been a little bit more initiative for me to, you know, have, more help and more like, this is something that actually is going to probably eventually help me and then maybe help my family in the future. But
Yeah.
music, my family was supportive of music, but it was always looked at as a hobby. It was always looked at as something that I love to do, something that I'm passionate about. But nobody had ever seen anybody make money in music unless you were
Hmm.
the pop stars of the day or the people that they looked up to. And even those stories, my mom was very fearful and scared to allow me to go into the music industry just because of the horror stories of the things that had took place and
Yeah.
happened. I mean, and I auditioned for all that stuff, the Disney stuff, the Nickelodeon stuff. I was a part of the thing, and
You did the circuit.
I did the circuit. Yeah, and the only reason I was not on those shows, they wanted me actually for some of those things, but my mom was so scared to allow me to go because of the the elusiveness of the music industry and the things that were just really, and I commend her because she was protecting me.
Sure.
But those are the things that I think are very, very important in terms of resources and knowledge and understanding that music and entertainment is a world where you can make money in and you don't have to sell your soul to do it.
And so that's the broke or famous myth, right? Either you're Taylor Swift or you're living in your parents' basement until you're 45, right?
Right.
And there's just, talk to me a bit about how you help dispel that for your family. I mean, I'm assuming you went off to Berklee, which already was like, wow, okay, he can go to Berklee. That's great. But I'll bet you some of your family was still, oh, he'll be, when he graduates from Berklee, he'll move back into the basement. There was probably still some of that. How long did it take to dispel that myth?
It took a long time to dispel that. I think it didn't click until I had children, right?
Oh,
And
cool.
I was actually, me and my wife got married, we were young. I was 18, she was 20, right out of high school. And she wanted to be a nurse and I wanted to be a musician. And so we moved to Boston to do that. And there was this idea that yes, absolutely, we support you, but you always know that everybody's wanting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They don't they don't know but the reason why I say it didn't kick in until I had children was because at that point I had to have a job. I had to have something consistent, other than the scholarships that me and my wife were living off of in college and things like that. Because my wife is also a Gates scholar as well. She didn't go into music. Um,
Nursing, I suppose.
yes. Essentially she started in nursing. But we were living off that, and so we
Right.
were fine, we were good. But now that we have a child, we have to move into our own places. We have to get out of this. We have to have our own things. And I decided this was the defining moment for me, and I think for my family in general. I decided that I was not going to go and get a job at McDonald's or go and get a job at, wherever you would, normally find work. And I decided that I was going to raise and be able to take care of my family off of music. So I started working in over here on this side of the country, which we call GB, or general business wedding bands,
Mm.
which in my opinion, opens the world and bridges that gap between the guy in his mother and father's basement to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Because it is the working musician. It is the world that we actually make money in as a musician, other than just touring or television or things like that. We're talking about you know gigging every weekend. We're talking about consistency. We're talking about I have gigs. So I still do it because there's so many benefits to it. But there's so many other jobs within that spectrum, like weddings, like private events, like corporate events, like teaching music. You can also be an engineer in a studio. You can also, I mean, there's so many facets of the music industry and ways to make money in music. It opened this entire new world, not only to myself, but to my family as well. Oh, so you're actually going to do this.
Yeah. And that's interesting. It's cool that it took, that moment when you just had to decide for yourself. I feel like every person has that moment when they decide for themselves. This is how I'm going to pay my rent without my help, without any help from anybody else. This is how I'm going to pay for my kids, God forbid, braces, without anybody else's help. And it's a lot of money. And there's all these resources out there for, people generally to help with things if they need help. But you making a decision yourself is this rite of passage that everybody in every industry has to go through. And so part of that myth maybe is about the 10,000 hours of mastery, right? The idea that if you spend 10,000 hours learning how to do anything, you're going to be able to get money for whatever that skill is that you really dedicated 10,000 hours to being a master at it, right? And how is music any different, right? That's the kind of the big thing. If you're going to go and be an engineer and be a first year engineer, you're going to work 2,000 hours, doing 40 hours a week in 1 year. And after 5 years, you will be a 10,000 hour master of engineering, right? It's the same thing. If you do 10,000 hours of music teaching and gigging and playing in weddings and doing professional events, you are going to be the person who gets those gigs. You are going to be the person who gets the call of, hey, I need help. Can you coach me up on this? Right? That's the kind of myth that I think people forget, which is that 10,000 hours of mastery applies to literally everything. And I mean, heck, teachers, I started off as a music teacher, right? I can tell you right now, I want to apologize to the first 5 years of students that I taught. It's just, you just don't know. You're new, you're green, you're a complete novice at this point. You think you know and you've got skills and you're trying to learn. But man, if I could have started off with the skills of a year 6 teacher, boy, would those kids have had a different experience. And I would have had a different experience. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think that that was the beauty of Berkeley as well.
Mm,
And I think that that is a smart decision for anybody that is going into the music industry to go to college for music. And the reason why I say this is because there is a period in time where you are doing free work. You're doing volunteer work. You're just trying to get exposure. You're just trying to get relationships and connections. It
yeah.
isn't all monetary in the beginning. And I think the best place to do that is when you're in college, when you're still building and growing and you have the opportunity to do free work opposed to being in your career where you're trying to be and where you're trying to go and you're still doing free work. And I understand that, people say, "Oh, well, I don't need to go to college for music." No, you don't have to go to college for music, but it is a place of training. It is a
Hmm.
place to be able to get those 10,000 hours in. It is a place to be, I mean, whatever you're trying to do, you can make all the mistakes that you need to make in that first four years. And then when you're out, you don't have to be making those mistakes going into your field, you know? So it is like a buffering time is what I like to call it.
That's
Um,
good.
and I think that that is important to know, but it should never be the, oh, this is what the music industry looks like, you know. There are still those aspects, there's always paying, we hear the big quote unquote pay your dues, we hear that a lot. And
Yeah, we
obviously
do.
that is a part of the music industry. You can't get around it. But again, in that you're still building another currency, which I call relationships, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and those are important too. Are those paying bills? Not necessarily in that moment,
Not
but it
yet. Not
will.
yet.
It will. And so building those relationships and me doing that, I worked at a church while I was at Berkeley as well.
Mm.
And some of it was volunteer work, and then later down the road became pay. It did set me up to be able to have these multiple streams of income within music. And that's the thing. It looks a little different than it is in the blue collar professional world where you're just business, one job, you're making all your money from that one thing. In music, you have to diversify. So I worked at a church. I did weddings. I also, did my own gigs and performances and things like that. I also was a music teacher. I also was, you have to diversify and you have to have multiple ways to bring in income because no, the income is not as consistent. It is not as stable as a lot of the other industries. But that is the importance of the music industry, and one of the main reasons why you should not just put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm.
It is something that you have to be able to be, multifaceted in.
Right. Well, that's so cool because, I'm trying to think about the kids who are out there who are thinking they don't want to necessarily be music majors. They don't want to necessarily go be a professional musician. But I'm trying to think about all the doors that were opened to you because you are a musician, right? And so you had to get to this place where, obviously you went to, University of Nebraska at Omaha for, just 1 year. God help that teacher who wanted to turn you into an opera singer. But ultimately, it's like trying to figure out like you had this idea of yourself being a musician, and that was a part of what you put yourself out as when you were looking at what's my next step, what's my next thing. And so, was it just people like the Gates Foundation that saw you and said, musician, I like this. This is different. Or were there other people? Were there other moments when doors opened to you because you were not trying to be just somebody who went into teaching or nursing or education? Was being musician and was the relationships that you built as a musician ways that you connected with people that opened doors for you? Can you talk a bit about as a youth what it meant to be a musician and try to figure out where you want to go and what that looked like? What kind of access did that provide to you?
Yeah. I will definitely say I don't think anybody looked at me like, oh, that's different. That's cool. He wants to be a musician. I think it was definitely uh, a challenge. Just like we're having this conversation about, people not understanding, oh, this is more than a hobby. And even if it is more than a hobby, he can actually make money doing it. I think what it did do for me, though, is it gave me the freedom and the ability to have those kind of relationships, though, that could
Mm,
lead to the pathways that I was looking for to make a career in music. I think I definitely built so many relationships, and one of the cool things, in my opinion, about music is that it crosses so many different other backgrounds and careers. Because right now, currently, I mean, I'm brushing shoulders with politicians. I'm brushing shoulders with CEOs and businessmen that are putting on events, and I'm performing for these events. I'm brushing shoulders with engineers and people that do, and millionaires and all of these different types of people that I'm brushing shoulders with because I'm doing these events. Even as a youth in Omaha, Nebraska, I'm being asked to perform for this cotillion. I'm being asked to perform for this, public event that's going on. Those kind of opportunities are what birthed me to be able to create my own pathway to making a stable financial.
career in music, yeah. That's
I think
really cool.
that's really, really key. Is most people don't go, oh, you're a musician. This is really, really cool, unless they need you for something.
That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Okay, because as as a CEO, when I'm building this thing, everyone's talking to me about the entrepreneur journey and what it's like to start a business, which is very much like trying to build a portfolio for yourself as a professional musician. Anyway, you've got to do everything. There's no CFO. You got to manage your own books. There's no CTO. You got to put your own website together.
Yes.
And so I think there's this huge relationship there between professional musicians, gigging musicians, portfolio musicians and entrepreneurs. But for me, being an entrepreneur in the music space is so unusual that typically they look at me and go, "You're building a business in what?" It's like, well, hang on a second. There's so many confused looks. Like, really? Can you make money in the music industry as a business owner, as an entrepreneur? And I'm just looking at him. I was like, dude, I've got performing friends who do it every day, and it's crazy. What is it? I think there was a report out recently that said there's a $1.5 trillion economy in the arts in the
Oh,
U.S. alone. And that's crazy. You know what I mean? It's a huge amount of money out there. And that's all just from performances, nonprofits, concerts, putting on art galleries and presentations and community events. And all of that stuff really does actually provide an enormous amount of value to everybody who's in our community. So it's very interesting to hear how, as a musician in your space, when they say, oh, that's interesting, you mentioned to me that means they need something from you.
yes.
Whereas for me, they're like, oh, that's interesting. They don't believe that I can provide value in their space.
Mhm.
That's so fascinating to me, that dichotomy there. But I kind of wanted to, yeah, go ahead. Do you think? Do you want to?
Well, but that's the spaces that you're in. When you're presenting what you do in front of individuals that probably are coming to an event that they weren't expecting you to be performing at, they go, "Oh, I'm doing such and such. Do you perform here, or do you do this, or do you do that?
Mm,
Here, can I have a business card?" Now you're moving from relationship to relationship. Now relationship is begetting relationship, and you're finding that network and that stability from either a free thing that you might have done or something that you were already at that you were getting paid for that's now leading to something else.
Okay, that's cool. So from a networking angle, it is actually really advantageous anyway. But that
Mm.
is really cool too, because I'm actually noticing, yeah, and it's an affinity group too, hilariously for me. There are musicians out there who have left music to start businesses, and they're finding other musicians and going, wait, hang on a second, I want to talk to you because we're different in the same way. And so that's kind of cool too. I do appreciate that very much. But your point about just continuing the network and the growth is also super relevant. But let me talk to you really quick since CommonTime Pathways, I just want to circle back really quick. We really want to try and help students figure out what their path forward is and allow music to be the kind of, how shall we say, the medium through which they can open doors, right? So I'm thinking about you on your site, you talk about College Possible. You
Yes.
talk about, different groups that have helped you go move through all of these different things, these barriers to a college education. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like. I mean, you're coming from, Omaha, which is not necessarily a music mecca in the world, you know, and you're trying to figure your way out. Like, what did College Possible do for you? How did you get connected to them? What were the barriers that you had when you were trying to figure out if you could go to college and be a professional musician?
So, as I was saying, College Possible in high schools, we're one of those programs in high school that I joined and I was a part of to make college possible. No pun intended. It was one of those.
It's kind of
Um,
works, doesn't it? It's good branding. You know exactly what they do because of their name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was one of those resources. As I said, my mom told me, if you want to go to college, you got to figure out how to pay for it, you know. And so it was one of those programs amongst others that I was a part of that helped prepare me and get ready for college, one, but two, more importantly, helped me get the resources that I need to be able to go to college. So, they were the ones helping me. One of the organizations that was helping me prepare for the Gates Millennium Scholarship. Also won the Susan Buffett Thompson Scholarship, which is Warren Buffett's daughter, or his wife, I'm sorry. And then there also were like a whole bunch of other, smaller scholarships and things like that that added up to that amount. I think that they were very influential in helping me forge a plan, and it started early in my high school career so that I wasn't trying to make up for it in my senior year, trying to get all because it is really, really difficult to get everything aligned in your senior year to make college possible. And I think that that is a huge, huge thing that students have to be aware of is that it isn't about, oh, I can, push off, the rest of the first half of my high school career and think I'm going to jump into, applying for colleges and going to where I want to go in my junior or senior year because it makes it that much more difficult and hard. And as I said, my mother told me that I couldn't go to college if I didn't pay for it. So I had to have a plan from the beginning.
Mm,
Thankfully, I had great, counselors. I went to Omaha Northwest High School. Shout out to all my Huskies.
there we
Uh,
go.
we they have a great they had a great guidance team there that they were just always throwing me things. Here, be aware of this, be aware of that. And that was really great and influential for me because it gave me the resources that I needed to be able to make this dream happen.
Mm,
Well, I will definitely say that for youth that are, looking to go into music as a career, as I said before, I think that it's very important. It's very important to go to college, not necessarily for the educational piece, but more so, well, yes, the educational training is great,
it's a byproduct.
the byproduct, but it is about getting in those 10,000 hours, the access to
Mm.
resources that college give you, especially colleges like Berkeley or New School or, colleges that really um, make a career in music possible.
They let you cut your teeth.
Exactly. It really does let you cut your teeth. And so this part is really important, the getting there and being able to enjoy it. I had a lot of friends at Berkeley who couldn't pay for it, who had to end up dropping out because it's a $75,000 a year school. You
Ooh.
know, it is not cheap. It is not cheap. And I was able to actually enjoy my experience because of the work that I put in high school. So I say that this is a really, really important piece to that is if you don't have the resources or the ability to be able to pay for it yourself, or your family does not, I think it is something that you, if you are in high school or going to high school, to be very, very conscious of because there's free money out there. There's free scholarships, free
But how do
opportunities,
you find it? Wouldn't it
and
be great if somebody built a platform that helped you connect with all those things?
exactly, exactly.
I don't mean to shameless plug CommonTime Pathways, but I
No,
mean, hey, we're here.
but that's the importance of what you're doing because there isn't a pathway for a musician. Even though I was a student that was aspirational and wanting to do this, it was my dream to go to a music school. Everybody else was going to your average university or I was the one that had the big dream. And
Mm.
so, they were preparing me for college. They weren't preparing me for music college. And it is very important, I think, in terms of what you're bringing up, is that there has to be a pathway for musicians. There has to be because there isn't a clear picture of okay, well, what is this going to look like? What is this going to turn into? I could not tell anybody, when I was applying for music, and I had to just tell them my story, where I come from, and what I was aspiring to do. At no point was I able to say, "Hey, I want to be a, music engineer in this, specific, studio, and I want to do that." I didn't know.
And you
And it's
didn't know how to find the music specific scholarships. You were really lucky that the Gates Foundation and the Buffett Group came together and could pay for Berklee.
absolutely. And had I known, the music scholarships and things like that I could have gotten, or it could have that much further what I was trying to do. The Gates Millennium Scholarship is no longer existed anymore. That's
Mm,
not, these aren't. So these are really, really important keys. And musicians have to have some type of resource to help them get the education that they need so that they feel more grounded and more stable and more confident to become musicians in in this industry. I think it's very much so needed for there to be knowledgeable, well-rounded musicians. Time out for there to, being people who are learning how to be musicians in their basement and, are planning to become famous off of that. Like, yeah, those are pathways that
yeah,
happen.
right. Yeah, sure.
We're talking about a sustainable, stable career in music that might not involve fame.
Yeah.
That might
For every headline and famous person in the NFL, there's a third string kicker or quarterback that you've never heard of who has a house that's a lot bigger than yours. And the guy's
exactly,
had 2 minutes of playing time all year.
exactly. But the reality of it, and that's a good point. The reality of it is that it comes from being able to actually know your resources and what's
Right.
possible and what's out there for you. You don't have to be the superstar that's on the billboard in front of everybody, being the ones doing the interviews. Now, some people that sounds great, but some people want to be in the back. Some people want to be the mixing engineer that gets paid, $100,000 a
Really
session,
good money.
really great money, and probably has a bigger house than the artist that they're probably recording.
Yep. Yep.
Those are the people that are making money in music consistently. They have sustainable lives that have what we would consider your 9 to 5 jobs within music, but it is very much so an not entrepreneurial foundation that comes from that. And that isn't always, you being the forefront of, that isn't the only pathway. And I think that that's what most people in the general public see. They go, "Oh, you want to be the next John Mayer,
No thanks.
be the next what?" You
No
know,
thanks. No thanks. I
right.
don't want that life. I want to be able to be with my kid. I want to raise my kid. I want to have a family. I want to be married to one person, maybe, for the rest of my life, in theory, and hope. You hope. These are not people who are conducive to that kind of a lifestyle.
And I live in both worlds. I live in both worlds because I'm an artist, so I have to be in the front end of the fame and all of that great stuff. But I've also had to play the background. I've had to sing backgrounds for people.
Right.
I've had to be the person writing the music or writing the song, writing and then leaving the session and letting them do, I've done that. I've done the teaching job. I've done the roadie job, being the person that gets the equipment and then I'm gone. I've done all of that stuff, and all of that stuff is sustainable. It's a lot more. There's unions in areas
Mhm.
like that, so that there is more sustainability within the music industry. So there are way more jobs in the music industry than just being the famous singer or the famous musician standing on stage traveling the world. Most people don't want that dream. It's too much. It's a lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like saying you're going to go be a quarterback, like for a lead quarterback in the NFL, one of the big MVPs. Like who really wants that job?
right. Oh, and I cannot forget this too, because I think that Berkeley highlights this very, very well. There's
Mm,
all music business
yeah,
opportunities in the music industry where you don't even have to be on the creative side of making the music. You can be on the administrative or the
operational,
operational side, thank you, of the music industry, which is very much so still needed and
huge.
a lot more sustainable. I have a lot more friends who are music industry lawyers. They are managers. They work for A&Rs as labels. They work on the side of creative direction. I mean, there's
There's so much out there.
endless.
I know it's awesome. Well, listen, this has been really cool. I'm really glad that we got a chance to chat here. It's really awesome to be able to think about how to inspire not only students but their families to think about music as another viable career choice. The idea that it's not just a nice thing to do in their educational upbringing. It's this is no, this is a real economy out there, and it's just like everything else. These 10,000 hours of mastery, getting cutting your teeth at a college where you can actually perform and network and create opportunities for yourself once you get out of there. I mean, people refer to colleges as just expensive country clubs for 18-year-olds. You know what I mean? You just meet everybody, you get to
Yeah,
know everybody, and then those are the people who you connect with, and then eventually you get a job from those people. Like that's the whole
absolutely,
point of going to
absolutely.
college, is that you get a job afterwards in, we hope, with whatever it is that you major in. But hey, well, when you're trying to pay a bill, you take what you get. But the idea that you get to make your decision and actually do that as a result of that network is pretty powerful. And I'm so grateful to you for joining us on the call today. And I think that what you're doing is awesome. I would love to bring you back, and we'll chat again in a few months and see how everything's going on. And I think this is great. I hope you had a great Father's Day. I know you were probably you were singing a wedding. Is that right?
I was working.
Still working, still working. You got to do what you got to do, man. But I'll tell you, it's cool to have you, and thanks so much for chilling with us. And I hope that we, get to have a lot of people inspired by your story and your, drive and your passion and your experience.
Well, no, thank you, and thank you for having me. And I think that it's incredible to have a platform like yours that is speaking for the musicians, the working musicians that are looking for these resources and these networks, because it is important to have a community to be able to connect the musicians to the resources and to the industry, because there are pathways, and pun intended.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our pathways, and it starts with this. It starts with the entertainment community looking out for the entertainment community and funneling more people to understand that this is not just a hobby, as you said. This is
Hmm.
a career that you can actually make sustainable money and retire off of. You can raise a family. I've done it. I'm doing it currently. It is very, very obtainable, and I think that your platform will help further that narrative as well. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And do you want to tell us where we can find you online? Where's your website, your socials, real quick?
Absolutely. You can find me on all social media platforms at Dreion Nation, DreionnAtion. And you can also go on my website at www.dreion.com to find where I'm performing, where I'm at, where I'm going to be appearing. And I hope to see you all soon.
Yeah, man, this is going to be great. Super cool. Thanks again so much, and take it easy. See you soon.
Thank you.